Okay, hi. Um, yeah, before I start, I should get some picture. That's good. Just a moment. Yeah. Okay, so let's try again on the right screen. Yeah. Okay. First of all, a question, because I have, like, last night decided to prepare a second different set of slides. Who of you have used Nagios generally? Probably everyone or something like that. Okay. Who does somehow monitor their OpenNebula environment? Okay, let's do it the other way around. Who doesn't? Like you have Sunstone and you just check status there. Okay, so everybody has something in place. That's good. Okay, then I'll go with the part which has some more theory and explains why I came up with kind of a different configuration. First, oh, sorry, that's not going to the next slide. Fail. I hate it. Okay. Hello. First, some introduction. I'm mostly a system administrator. I've been doing Unix stuff for quite a long time and ended up with a lot of storage, virtualization stuff to, for example, have less lab systems. Drifted into monitoring because I've been using Nagios for almost 10 years or something and like scalability stuff. So I wanted to test monitoring large systems. And I also do clustering and high availability, so I spend a lot of time thinking about how to detect errors and how to react on them. And also about business continuity and finding out how to define where is your way back to getting everything working again. Okay. Yeah. I started in virtualization by doing an embedded SAN distribution because I used to have many servers at home and I needed to get rid of them. And this is also like the way I ended up with OpenNebula by now. I do training and there's also points where you just hit a lot of errors with systems. Like if you do an LVM class, you're gonna break something, and it's interesting that most of the errors are not reported by the systems themselves. Okay. For OpenNebula, I'm just a small-time user with it, but for this task, I've been preparing for many months and thought about how to really get good data out of it. So one thing which always upset me is like states as unknown or something. Well, they don't really give you good information, and you can get kind of stuck on them. And so I've also thought about how to get some monitoring for those. Okay. So, like we saw, most of you have used Nagios, but generally monitoring is a hated topic. Many people have problems with the configuration and also with too many alerts or no alerts, whatever kinds it does wrong. And something else is that most managers are still unhappy with the data they're getting from us. So they ask for a stupid report, we give them a stupid report, but I think over time I figured out what they really want. Okay, one more thing. Last week I noticed there's almost no checks for OpenNebula. There's a few Ruby-based ones which use OCCI to get some info out of OpenNebula, but that was about it. It was confusing for me. Like here, most of the people used Nagios, but nobody had really created even the basic stuff. I don't know why, but I created them now. But I also dropped a few demos for that. If you want to use them, you'll find the link in the slides. Okay, if I set up a monitoring system, basically, I need to watch out for redundant stuff. Let's say I have 5 hypervisors, and each has like a SAN connection which is redundant. If I don't monitor the individual links, I'll not notice any problem coming up on me. And then it will just fail at a later time. And that's why we normally just monitor everything we can. At least in my old life, that was the way to do it. The problem is the checks we create like that only monitor component status normally, or CPU load or something. But I started to think about capacity. So for example, you have your disks, and you can track with most monitoring systems what the I/O rates are. But actually, as long as the application isn't getting into trouble, it doesn't matter what data I'm collecting on the I/O rates. So what we normally would do is we get an alert or a ticket from a user that his VM is slow, and then we check the I/O rate. But basically, what we needed to check is if it's exceeding that, what it can do. And that's the thing which gets interesting. And in a company, your managers, they might not even care if a single hypervisor exceeds its performance rates, because maybe they just know every third customer is going to complain for some other reason, and it doesn't matter to them. They want to know if they have to plan for an upgrade of the whole infrastructure in a year or something. That's info they want. For processes, we all know how to monitor a process, and I'm not saying we shouldn't. Like the OpenNebula daemons, they need to be monitored. We need to monitor if libvirt is running. But if I want to really check if my system is working, I need something else. I need some kind of end-to-end checks. They can be really trivial. The most trivial end-to-end check is pinging like the Sunstone server from the outside, or trying to log in there. That will just check if the basics are working, and the idea with an end-to-end check is if any component involved has a problem, this check is gonna fail. So they cover a lot more than checking many single things. And the other thing is, if I just lose one hypervisor, it's not a big deal. If I lose one of the components which are used in the front end and also in the business side of things, it's a much bigger issue. Yeah, normally we have one problem. We don't have unlimited resources, and also it gets boring if you set up everything. If you are constrained for resources, then you have to think about it. Maybe you can't monitor everything, so you just have to carefully pick what you're using. Some services which cause big problems, or which affect many people, something like that, or which can just get the system stuck. So what I mean is, it's not enough to just set up checks for the stuff which worked, or the one you came up with. You really have to plan that. Long-term planning and identifying which are the best pieces to monitor, and then create those checks. So for example, instead of just setting up something, it can be better to have a single check where you spend a week on that provisions a VM from the outside, deletes it, provisions it again, because that thing will cover everything you need. Okay, yeah. I actually managed to give examples now, but the first times I always forgot. Okay. The question is how to get information into the monitoring. I don't know who here is aware of CheckMK. It is basically a configuration generator for Nagios with many, many extensions. Many people love it because it does automatic inventory. So you add a host, you tell it to do an inventory, and it will detect most things which can be monitored on a system and do it automatically. But that's not what I'm here for. The interesting part for me is making it dynamic and making use of rules. So defining some kind of SLAs in your monitoring that will just apply to all components that you have. So not just detect if there's disks, but predefine rules for example, the performance of your disks. And yeah, I said CheckMK is a config generator, and these configs are made via rules. So that's why you can put in the rules before you actually have the config or add any system. I've been discussing with some few people about tracking business metrics with monitoring. That's something we normally don't do. We monitor all kinds of data, but we are not turning it into more. So we know, for example, the I/O rate on all servers, but we don't know at which point it'll affect sales or something. And we don't definitely, probably no one has an alert for that. Platform is slow, we're losing customers because the amount of customers is dropping because they're quitting. But it's possible. Yeah, and I think what most managers are after if they ask for these weird reports is actually this data. Finding out if the platform is performing good and how the reception is with the users. Normally we can't answer it, but I think everybody knows how to monitor this stuff. We just need to do something different with the data we're getting. I've been thinking about that and tried to come up with basic groups of services. And so far, I think these three are the interesting ones. Availability means something which is gone or working, just these two states. So like, if you have a clustered server, the availability is okay until it's really dead. So what I've removed is, for example, ping checks that can go critical if 2/3 of the pings are gone. Because the system is still available. It has problems, it's not good to reach, but it's still available. And I rather have one check that tells me the system is broken or it works. And I want that check to be true. And the performance issue is if I'm losing 2/3 of the pings or something. For business operations, what I mean by that is, for example, being able to sign on, create a VM, or for example, if I can sign on and create VMs, but they all go to pending, I want an alert for that, in case something gets stuck. Some examples to make this easier. For example, I have redundant components like air conditioning. One of them can fail, all of them can fail, and the whole platform is still available. It will, of course, die in a few hours, but at that moment, if my monitoring tells me everything is broken, it's just not true. And I want the monitoring to always give a really exact status. The other thing, I actually managed to do that once. The Nagios VM collected too many graphs, and it totally wasted the performance of virtualization platform, but stuff is still working. So on the Nagios, it looked okay. Of course, like 5 minutes after having the issue with the RD files, there was users and system admins coming to me and telling me about it, and this was a big impact, even though everything looked okay. So we can, of course, go ahead and monitor the I/O latencies and identify there's an issue. But it would be better if we also knew that this is like topsiding the whole network. Okay, that's another example about the business impacts. Let's say I lose a few of my images, and I'm not like in a very professional setting where I have real SLAs and pay real money if something's wrong. Because in that case, it's different. Let's use something like the normal cloud hosting case where the usual reimbursement is free use time if you lose data, like Amazon did it. You lose all your data and you can use it for more time. In that case, the business impact of a lost hypervisor in VMs is quite low. But if you lost your sign-up accounting or something like that, that's a really high impact. Even though from our side, as we try to protect the data and keep the hypervisors running, web interface working, yes, no, it's really a tiny issue. Yeah, that's a very recent one. It will only help the ones who can read German. Basically, a database backend called Navision went down, and yeah, they lost traffic accounting, power accounting, management. You couldn't access the racks. You couldn't order new domains or anything. So for that time, while that stupid SQL database, where I, from the Unix side, don't care about at all, was down, nothing was possible. So this was a much bigger impact than losing any customer server, which is of course weird. Okay, and this is the last example, I think, before we go into the technical stuff, about KPIs. Let's assume everything is green on our monitoring. It's fast. We're testing it. We even have some end-to-end tests or something. But the customers are running away for some other reason. Why shouldn't we notice it in the monitoring? It's quite easy, actually. The sign-up rates would drop, or they wouldn't create new VMs with their systems. And of course, we could monitor that. We know if a VM is being created or not. We just have to make use of the data. While I was thinking about that, it got quite interesting. You can, of course, take the number of running VMs or creations and calculate revenue from it, or at least pass the data to the people who can, and not as an Excel sheet or a report, but give them live access if you want to. You can also help with storage. People continuously create virtual machines, and you can gather when you're going to run out. It might be in half a year, but you can track the rate, and you can do predictive analysis on that. In CheckMK, that's a default. You can simply click, I want a trend analysis on this file system, and it will tell you when it's going to run out. Yeah, and the fun part is, if you track this data, you can actually tell when your company is gonna go bankrupt if the customers are leaving. Because you could simply find out, okay, we're paying this much for the servers, and we're getting this much revenue per user. The number's reducing. Okay, we might have a problem in a month. And this is actually what our managers also do. All we're missing is the interface for the data. And what I've noticed, normally you need to really go to the IT manager or something if you want to find out about this data, because the technical guys, even in management, they don't know about it. Yeah, and you could even create alerts for your business checks. Like a VM has been down for 10 hours. We know in the monitoring that the VM is down. We know how long it's down. And if there's really SLAs, and this is not just a normal hosting, but something business-wise, then we could also alert if it's only 1 hour left or something until we have to pay back, something like this. Yeah, starting point. That's from one of the checks I created. I simply set a limit on the VMs which are in status pending. Of course, this can be better. It could be dynamic and whatever. But the basic thing is I wanted an alert if the VM platform is not creating more instances. Okay, I think something went wrong here, but so what? Okay, the next topic is about availability. I already mentioned it. I want reliable checks. Any moment I look at my monitoring, I really want to see the truth. So I don't want flapping. Nagios has flap detection and suppresses stuff for some time. I rather give more retries and so on, so that if I get a notification out of the monitoring, I really know the server's down, even if it takes me 5 minutes to get the info or something. I will also give wiggle room. Like, sometimes your network just does weird stuff and you lose a packet or something. Well, it's bad, and you need to monitor the network, and you need to know there's a problem, but you don't need to be told the server is down just because a packet was lost. So if you check the servers, give enough retries to get a real valid result. There should not be any false alerts in your monitoring. And if you can't get rid of them that way, then you turn off the checks in question. So if you get 1,000 alerts a week about some service which has a problem, just turn this monitoring off, because if you're not gone broke and you haven't been fired and it crashes 1,000 times, it can't be a problem. Yeah, and where possible and you have the time, write end-to-end checks for your stuff. So really application-wise stuff as the user would see it. And these, it's completely fine if they if they generate some false positives. That might be better than not having them, because like as with a user, if a user calls you and he has a problem with the platform and it doesn't work, probably it didn't work for him at that moment. It doesn't matter if it works for you while you test it. There has been a problem. One important thing, if you run something like Nagios or Singa, any of this kind, you must, really must, define a parents so that the monitoring knows if it's a network outage and the system is unreachable or if it's a real problem. Otherwise, you will always get false alerts. Okay, so to repeat, for availability checking, only stuff which is binary in result, so 1 or 0, and also don't monitor redundant components at that point. So if you have 2 network links, don't monitor the single links if you want to give a high-level result. Then you only want to alert if both are down. Of course, you need to monitor in some place if one of the links failed, but it's not affecting your company at the moment if it's just one. Yeah, and then this one is a trick question. Can your config understand the SLAs? I didn't do very much with that in the preparation, but basically it's possible that you externalize the SLAs. So they're not in your monitoring config, but dynamically loaded at the moment you're compiling your config or you're starting your Nagios. The idea is, yeah, something like that. The idea is just to, oh, stop it. The idea is simply to have them dynamic and even allow your business users to tell them. There will be more work on your side. Like if they say they want to have an alert if any component will fail within a week or something like that. You will spend some time to define the correct levels for your file system to do that alert. But if you do it, they will be happy. And basically then you can turn off alerting to yourself and only send it to them. Okay, the other thing is performance monitoring. This is something which, in the way I think it should be, isn't possible right now, but I want to show it. Basically, in the performance alerting, you want low intervals so that you have fine granular data. It's also okay to measure multiple points. So if you want to check storage performance, you can have a check for I/O latency and another one or one that tracks the fiber channel performance at the same point, something like that. If you have the data, you can also do prediction on it. And ideally, I think a performance alert should only come out if there is a performance issue. But most Nagios checks these days try to aggregate many things into one service. So you have a network check, and it can go critical because the network failed. It can also go critical because there's many errors. It can go critical if the bandwidth usage is too high. And it can go critical if the link is set wrong. So you have like 4 issues compressed into one. And if you get a notification, you just don't know what it means. So I thought about how to solve that. Yeah. Basically, this is what you already can do. You can monitor every item. You can set different levels. That's all quite easy. What you need to do is to baseline what actually is your performance that the servers can deliver. So if I get a new server and it has a RAID controller at the start, I'll do benchmarking and write down the numbers so that I know if my disk I/O rate is this much, it's at peak. Otherwise, I can't really set an alert. And yeah, the thing is, if we have these numbers, we can actually make alerts based on how much performance we have left. So instead of saying we're at 95% of I/O rate or we're at 600 megabytes per second, we could say we're almost exceeding what this thing can do. And by that, for example, decide not to run stuff on a certain server. This is the only good example I found. It's a Rolls-Royce cockpit. And instead of RPM meter or anything, they simply give you a power reserve. Yeah, and I think for virtualization platforms, this is really important because you have like memory, CPU, IOPS, and network performance. And it's always tracked per host, but basically, if a single host exceeds it, it just shouldn't schedule more VMs. But the question is, does it look in total? Okay, I've made a check like that. It takes all OpenNebula hosts by default, and for each one of them tracks CPU allocation and memory usage, but it also creates a summary. So what you can do is you turn off the alerts for the single hosts, because if they're full, who cares? And if your overall capacity reaches like 25% left, then maybe an SLA goal kicks in because you say you need to cover 5 server losses or something like this. So you can actually make an alert if you run out of failover capacity. Okay, I set the redundancy thing. Let's drop it. Yeah. The thing is, these rules should be in your monitoring already before you add the hosts. So the config should be dynamic and scripted, and not just like you have something that adds a new host. You really want to push configuration first and then just drop in the host so that the config applies. Just a moment, I'll skip to the easier part here. Okay, just a moment. So that's what I've actually done. I've added hooks for OpenNebula that push the servers or the VMs or whatever into the monitoring system and trigger a reinventory there, so a new scan of systems. The rule sets are already defined, and at the moment the system comes in, the rules start applying. And then I have, just a moment, I skipped one too far, sorry. Where does it, yeah, that's where I wanted to be. So I've made 3 Nagios servers to cover these things. One monitors availability, one monitors capacity, and one processes. It's really a bit odd. Normally you just have one server monitoring a system. I show you that in this case it's okay, because they're all automatically configured. So you don't have to enter much stuff into a single system. All of these sites means single Nagios instances, have predefined rules for everything. They don't mention a host name, they just mention CPU alert levels, network usage alert levels, or number of retries until the system is considered down. The main goal was to have nothing hard-coded. So a host name doesn't have to be in the Nagios config. If you have a list of services which you can monitor, you just split where they go. So the link states are considered availability. I/O rates, that's capacity, because at some point I'm exhausting what I have, but until then it's fine. Same for power consumption on a rack. And if the rack loses all power, that's an availability issue. For Sunstone, I think that matches the 2 things. If it's down, you have an availability issue, but it also affects processes. Yeah, so, and that's why I had the hooks. They actually push the objects into the monitoring and make the rules happen. And to look at it, I don't want to look into 3 Nagios systems and tick off in every one of them if the server is okay. So I have a central one which aggregates the info. Oops, and now I crashed out, doesn't matter. I'll just show it to you. Okay, that's like the high level thing now. You see the 3 Nagios sites, and each of them has kind of the same systems. They have different numbers of services because they monitor different things. Yeah, now I'm running short. What I've done is, at the time where the hook runs, it simply puts a flag file on the server, and there's a cron job on the server which checks for this flag file. If it finds it, it will do a reinventory of all the services and create a new config and start the system again. And on each of these monitoring sites, I have excluded all checks that don't apply for it. So for example, in the capacity side, you have a file system usage check, but you don't check for the mount options of the file system. That would be an availability or something, in case it crashes to read-only and is broken. And so it wasn't as hard in the end, because I just made a list of the services and assigned them to different monitoring systems. I'll show you that list, if I still have it open. Uh-oh, that's bad. Ja, wenn man jetzt nicht blind ist. Ah, okay. So, let me just scroll down. No, it doesn't work. Yeah, that was my reminder. I'm sorry. Time is up. Yeah. Yeah, that was the reminder. Basically, if you write your checks so that the warning and alert levels are referenced over a variable, they can be changed at runtime. But that's like super internal checkmk thing. We don't have to concern with it, but I had to remember. Beside that, I just wrote a long list and assigned them to different sites. So if you have a look at this, end-to-end stuff would mostly be a business thing, except maybe if you also track the performance of something, like VM creating. If it's slow, that would be maybe not a full business issue, but probably yes, because it still pisses off the users. And yeah, stop at the NFS exports. That would be a typical availability thing again. And by grouping like this, it was quite easy. I turned off all checks that didn't match for the right site, imported the systems, scanned them, and only the thing which made sense in my grouping was left over. Okay, I'll stop at that. I'm sorry I ran short now. Down here is interesting. VM launches and deletions. That's my KPI tracking, and that's what the checks also do now. Okay, questions? Yeah.
You mentioned that you wrote Nagios plugins for OpenNebula.
Yes.
Can you just show us?
Yes, of course.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can you please repeat the question for recording?
Oh, okay, sorry. He wanted to have a look at the existing checks, which I added. I did not add the ones I found a few days ago, Ruby-based ones, but I can show you the new ones. Let's do it here. OpenNebula. Yeah, like this. So there is one for statistics that tracks creations per minute or something like that. My idea was really to have data, but I think it should be per day or something. And with my lab, it was not really good to do that. There is the summary check, which tracks the memory usage over all hypervisors. It could also be configured to do it just for a cluster. I don't know if that's useful. And these are the individual ones, which track it per host. So you can know this one host is constantly overloaded, but in general, I still have capacity. And there is also one more, which I'm now missing. I don't know why. VM status. Ah, yeah, okay. I don't know what happened to this one, why it didn't show up. Okay, because it doesn't say OpenNebula in the name. This one tracks the status of a VM. And of course, there is a KVM check already. But that's a different thing. KVM check only takes over after the VM really works and is running. This one checks the provisioning status from OpenNebula. So it will alert if a VM goes to failed, for example. Yeah, like this. Just a moment. I think there's a few more that should be added, for example, for virtual networks, if they're exhausted, something like that. Any other questions? Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Florian.
Danke.